Enter the battlefield of Shiloh.
So remember when we said March 19th, the troops started arriving? This is where they camped. So this was under the 2nd Division under Brigadier General William Hl Wallace, who's later killed in the Hornet's Nest.
A very nuanced battle.
And the name for the Hornet's Nest comes from the sound the bullets were making flying through the air.
The whooshing, yeah.
We come to our first monument. Each has a story.
She's famous. She's writing their deeds.
Wow.
This one is very impressive.
It is. This is the Iowa Monument.
This is the tallest monument out here.
Lady Fame writing the deeds of the soldiers. The craftsmanship is amazing. A perfect memorial. These monuments are the only indicator of the fierce fighting that happened here so long ago. Men from Iowa, fighting to preserve this fractured union. Indiana, the list goes on. And Grant's last line, mentioned previously.
What do we got here?
This is Grant's last line. It's a map. You can see what's happening at this point of the battle, which was like towards the end of the first day. So you're looking between 2:30 and 7 p.m. So you're here. The Confederates are pushing, right? There's water there. Hl Wallace finally gets here with his troops, and Buell's army finally lands on the boats. So they're being pulled back into this point. There's a point, and they get reinforcements here, reinforcements there, and then they're able to next day push back. Overnight, the Confederates are camping in like Sherman's abandoned camp.
That's right.
And they pretty much think they've won the battle. And they think, oh, we'll just finish them off tomorrow, get some rest. They've been fighting. They end up fighting for like 13 hours or something the first day.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, you get Hl Wallace's troops at night, too late to really start fighting. And then Buell's men start coming in off the riverboats. And you saw how that was. It's like a cliff.
Yeah.
And then there's like a place where people are. There's like a narrow part right by the river.
Yeah.
So there's men retreating and they're going down, and it's crowded. So it's crowded with all these like panic-stricken men. As they're getting off the boats, these men are coming towards the boats, trying to get away.
Wow.
And that wasn't really talked about in the movie, but there were guys all on that. Because there's nowhere to go. You can only retreat to the river and then you're stuck.
Yeah.
So it says the 3 guns of this battery were engaged here Sunday afternoon and remained in position all night. One thing that I don't know is if it was touched on, because overnight it's the lightning storm, it's raining, and the Union soldiers also fired their artillery all night to make sure nobody got any sleep.
Oh.
I don't think most people today understand what these men endured.
Is this an earthwork?
and earthwork, rare here.
So what's the purpose of this one earthwork?
Lieutenant Nispel of this battery occupied this position with 2 guns Sunday afternoon and night, April 6, 1862. He threw up a small earthwork in front of his guns, which was the only earthwork erected on the field that night. So I guess the earthwork, and I'm guessing, it protects the guns? Fire, you know what I mean? Like the gun can fire over it, but it's not as vulnerable, maybe? The Union Army was surprised. They were camping here thinking they were going to fight in Corinth. So they just camped out. They didn't dig any entrenchments. General Grant later said that he thought it was demoralizing to dig a lot of trenches. So they were basically just like on a happy camp out.
Gotcha.
The weight of this battle wasn't known early on. This battlefield isn't laid out in an easy order. It's laid out by the events over the course of the days of battle, so it can get a little confusing.
So this is the Confederate Memorial at Shiloh, and
this is sad.
we are going to concentrate and look at it. In the middle is Victory. The woman in the middle, she represents victory. She has a victory wreath in her right hand. She is handing that wreath to Death. And behind her is Night. And what this memorial is saying is, if Albert Sidney Johnston had not perished and the reinforcements had not come that night, they would have won, the South would have won the battle. So Victory is handing her wreath to Death and to Night. This is day 1 of the battle. You have 11 soldiers looking up. Day 2, you have 10 soldiers looking down in defeat. Looking ahead optimistically to the battle, there's an artilleryman. You've got a cavalry guy over here. He can't ride because of the trees. He's got his hand out in frustration. Behind him with his head down is an officer who's been given the order to retreat the first night.
Wow.
So he feels like victory's in our grasp and he's been told to stand down. There's a lot of detail on this.
Yes, there is.
He's got a spur. You can see his cavalry. He's got a spur. And the terrain was hard for the horses, so there wasn't a lot of cavalry action. And the officer is like, oh, I can't give the order to keep fighting. Gotta stop. The first guy is an infantryman, and in his right hand is the flag. So someone's dropped the flag and he has lifted it up. And behind him is an artilleryman, and they're both looking out calmly.
Credits are given on the back of the monument. This monument tells a sad story of victory within grasp, yanked away. Confederate or Union, it's sad.
This was the surrender of the hornet's nest. So like we were talking about earlier, how it was sort of like a circle. They got circled, and William H. Wallace was mortally wounded because they were told to keep it at all costs. But there's a point where they should have really retreated. But they did, in fact, buy time, waiting for Buell and everybody to get there. So it wasn't all in vain. But Prentiss was the one who gave Peabody a hard time, saying that Peabody started the battle. When Peabody didn't start the battle was going to happen anyway. But Peabody is killed. W.H. Wallace is killed. Who is left alive? Prentiss. And he goes 20 years. He doesn't say anything to anybody. And then historians start coming out. And then he eventually becomes sort of lifted up as this hero of Shiloh for holding the hornet's nest and buying time. But you'd like to hear Peabody's view. You'd like to hear Wallace's view, but they didn't survive, so you don't know. You only had his side of the story. Like, I don't think he went out and just started bragging. I think he was, he was quiet for a while. Then he was heralded as this hero and went on speaking tours. And then I think there was some, later on, historians were like, but really he was hard on Peabody, and we don't know what Wallace thinks about anything. So it's kind of a controversy to this day, how heroic he was.
Here we see the spot Wallace received his fatal wound.
General William Hl Wallace, commanding the 2nd Division, Army of the Tennessee, was mortally wounded here at 5 p.m. April 6th, died at Savannah, Tennessee, April 10th, 1862. He was hit right here.
Duncan Field, a place of a heavy deciding fight, as we'll see. Markers dot the landscape. Each one marks the spot of something significant.
So this is the other side of Duncan Field.
Stacey, who knows the history, orients her thoughts.
This is Ruggles Battery, so it's a half-mile of cannons. You can't even see them all. You'd have to really put on your hiking boots and go back there. It's a half-mile walk. Basically, after 6 hours of fighting, the Confederates were not able to puncture, the Union line with just infantry. So they gathered a bunch of cannons, like 6 batteries of cannons, 11 batteries of artillery, and just bombarded the position. And this is what allowed them to capture Benjamin Prentiss and 21,000 Union soldiers.
Imagine a half-mile long line of cannons just pummeling through the woods and across this field.
It really shows the scale and might of the Union Army, that this is what it took to succeed here.
Sharp contrast to the peace that it is today.
We make our way down the line of Ruggles Battery. This was the largest mass bombardment seen on American soil as of this date. Ruggles took it upon himself to arrange this armament in the void in command left by the death of Albert Sidney Johnston to take the Hornet's Nest. Artillery from all over the battlefield consolidated here to unleash on the enemy forces. It just goes on and on. It's such a contrast between the moss-covered ground and the iron of war that stands upon it.
The round ones are for the second day, I think.
Oh.
I just follow along, awed by the weight of the history and impressed by Stacey's deep knowledge of the battle.
Stacey was just talking about how she read all this stuff, but she did not understand it until she walked it. And how much more true is that, of not being able to understand it unless you were there at the time?
That lack of understanding, as I see it, runs deep today.
Stacey just pointed out there's a road. Check it out.
I just keep luring Brian further and further away from the car.
We reach a paved road. We think the car is near. We check out the monuments.
Wow, that's amazing.
A merry little chase down this road. It came out on another paved road that did not lead to our car, strangely.
We don't know what happened.
We almost thought we died there for a minute and then we're like on the road to heaven.
We're not sure.
But we're heading back, presumably to the car. Hard to imagine that such a bloody battle of the Civil War happened in these very woods. With such a loss of life.
People and animals.
America was bathed in blood and forever altered.